So, reflecting on self worth and the need to keep in mind my own value and worth, I was scrolling through social media and I came across a post by Lisa Nichols. If you haven't followed her, she's an excellent page to follow. Um, she's a motivational speaker. I came across her some years ago, and so I've been following her for some time. But she shared a post, and that kind of caused me to reflect in some recent circumstances in my personal life. There was a time where I really struggled to stay in touch with my core self, to fully embrace my own value and my own worth. Now, some of that is foundational conditioning. If you grow up in environments that don't honor your needs and where you're not safe and you're constantly invalidated, you kind of take that into adulthood, and that can be more of a struggle, which is kind of the case for me. So throughout my adult years has been really kind of going on this healing journey, learning to accept myself in all the phases of my life, and to forgive myself for ways in which I abandoned and rejected and disowned parts of myself. And obviously, like I said, that comes from that core wounding where that was done in childhood, and you kind of take that into adulthood. And the people that did that, they don't have to even be in your space anymore. You kind of take that on and do it to yourself. It's not something that has to happen external to you. But when you don't, and recognize your inherent value and your inherent worth, which is unchanging. You are inherently worthy. You inherently have value that cannot be taken. Now you can come to believe that it has, and your actions and reactions in the world will mirror that for you. You'll find yourself around people in spaces that do that. You're going to encounter that throughout life regardless. But the idea that you should stay in that often comes from a belief that you don't deserve, you're not worthy of something better. But you are inherently worthy to be held in safe and nurturing spaces that cannot change. Your inherent worth and value exists because it is there because you exist. It's simply inherent to who and what you are, and it doesn't matter what stage or what phase you are in life, how low you think you might have fallen, or how far off your own path you might find you think you find yourself. That cannot be taken or diminished, unless you believe that it has. Now, again, there's been this need to forgive myself for the ways in which I've continued to do that, and forgiveness for the people that taught me that. So it's been a journey, to kind of embrace that. Throughout time, I found myself around people in spaces that did not honor me, and because that was what I grew up in, that was normal to me. I didn't question it or think anything about it. It caused me a lot of confusion within self, about myself. So this has really been a journey, and this is not challenging for everybody. I had a boss one time, and we kind of had a conversation about that, and he was just like, well, I would never stay in a space that doesn't honor me or where I'm not valued. But his foundational roots were very different. He came from a very stable, nurturing, and loving family, and he was never taught to question his value and his worth. So when he went out into the world, he didn't question that, and so it would never dawn on him to stay in a space that did not honor who and what he was. That is not the case for all of us. I've gone into spaces and I've tried to change myself and adapt myself. I've had a supervisor telling me I needed to dumb myself down, me not understanding how to do that, but really trying. But that was something about them, some way in which how I showed up made them feel some kind of way. It really wasn't about me. And because I didn't know myself, and I didn't know how to not let that affect me. And so I tried to change to adapt instead of recognizing that this was a space and a person that could not value me, and leaving that. It's been a journey to be able to do that. And sometimes when I don't recognize that, that space will, like, I'll be abandoned from that space, whether it's to lose a job, be fired because of that, um, and to not let that affect my value and my worth. I've gone through a recent experience, and that had taught me how much growth I've done in that area, though. When I was rejected from that space, it did not cause me to doubt my value and my worth. I remember someone saying, "Well, maybe you can go back and talk to that person. Maybe you know you can fix that situation." And I was like, "This isn't for me to fix. This is not something I've done wrong. Um, I can't make myself small to make them feel comfortable." And at this point at this particular stage, like, this person has said that they don't see value and worth in me. I am not going to beg them to see value and worth in me. That is not what is going to happen. Um, a repair process, if it were possible, within this particular rupture, is up to that person. Um, and that was I am someone who shows up with integrity. I have high ethics, and I show up and give in that space in such a phenomenal way. I have no need to apologize for that. And their lack of understanding or seeing me for who and what I am doesn't mean I'm supposed to beg for that. I no, that's not what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Um, and that was a huge moment of growth. Now, that caused me a lot of instability within my foundation at home. It caused me financial stressors, and it caused me a lot of things. And I've been in this space before, and when that happened prior, I forgot who and what I was. I began to see myself as something less than. And I saw myself as broken. This could only have happened because I'm broken. Today, I recognize that is not the case. And so I can step out into the world differently. But it's taken years of work in validating myself and recognizing what I have to offer, recognizing that not every space and not every person is in alignment with who and what I am, and being okay with leaving that environment or being rejected from that environment or that person. I caught myself trying to date recently, and I met this guy, and we had known each other like superficially, though, like we were acquaintances when in my youth, and ran back into them, and sitting around talking to them, and them telling me how intelligent I was, and but then the aside to that was, but you really shouldn't show that you're that intelligent. Again, this is not the first time that I've heard that from people. I've heard that in workspaces and in personal relationships. And it used to make me feel small and make me want to play small and try to change who I was. And in this case, I just looked at him and was like, well, any man that thinks that I should be less intelligent isn't a person for me. My intelligence should be an asset in a relationship, because in relationship, two people bring their differences together to maximize that. We're holding ourselves, and we're meeting each other in that, and relationship should make you more powerful. It should bring your different strengths together. There's different types of intelligence, and the things that I'm interested in are the things that I seem intelligent in, because I've spent a lot of time studying those things, and have an intense interest in those things. I'm also a person with multi-potentiality, so my interests are quite diverse as well. But I don't think I'm supposed to be less intelligent because somebody doesn't have the knowledge base I have in a certain area. I don't know a whole lot about cars, or I don't know a whole lot about, if my air conditioning, or there's a roofing problem. I don't know a whole lot about that. I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't know anything about or don't know a lot about. They're simply not areas of interest or areas in which I've learned things, and I don't really want to. So if somebody has strengths in that area, they're, in those areas, they're going to be a lot more intelligent than me. Those simply aren't things that I have a lot of knowledge in. But I wouldn't expect that person to suddenly play stupid and act like they don't know how to do those things or they're not knowledgeable in that area just because I'm not. So I'm not going to pretend that I'm less intelligent so that someone doesn't feel small. That going on in them really isn't about me. That's within them. That's an insecurity within them that has to be shored up. I'm not putting you down and telling you that you're not smart. So there's nothing for me to fix in that. Do you understand what I'm saying? I can validate you in your journey and where you are, but I don't do that by becoming less than. And I don't even know why, but I did continue to engage in that for a little bit. And it was still like constantly coming up. And I don't even know. He would compliment me but tear me down at the same time, and it would be done in such a subtle way. It was a but it was a recognition of how abuse cycles start and how we can ignore certain indicators that a relationship might not be safe. It only took me it took me a couple of weeks, but there was times where I would end up in a relationship with somebody for years and before I could recognize that and get myself out of it. So it was still a moment of growth, even though it lasted like 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks too long type deal. Because I remember one time, I don't even remember what he said, but I kind of looked at him and I was like, if you're not attracted to me, that's fine. But just because you don't find me attractive doesn't mean I'm not attractive. And anytime I challenged that type of situation, there was a time I wouldn't. I would begin to question myself, but I didn't. I questioned him in that. Like, if you're not attracted, that's fine. You know what I mean? We don't have to be in a relationship. Like, just because I'm not attractive to you doesn't mean I'm not attractive to somebody. So that just means we're not a good fit. I mean, and that's nothing wrong with that. That wasn't the response he was expecting. He might have been expecting me to show up as I did when I was much younger, much less secure in myself. There's one thing I love about getting older. I've learned myself a lot better and have a greater acceptance of myself. I've gotten to know myself quite a bit. Now, I do show up very differently aspected sometimes, and so my affect can be quite fluctuating. However, even in that, the core of me, who I am at my core, really is unchanging. So there's a core me. So whatever aspect I show up in, that core me is unchanging. How I show up in the world and how I speak and respond to things can show up very differently. But the core of me is very much unchanging, and I've come to learn that over time. It's been a process of acceptance, but you have to be really mindful of the type of people that you spend time with, the spaces that you inhabit, the people that you're around, even the content that you take in. Social media has these algorithms, and what you watch and engage in is what shows up more for you, right? So if you subscribe to a lot of things that uplift, encourage, and validate you on your journey, then that's what shows up more for you. So it's really important that that we consider how we cultivate the things that we take in. It definitely can impact how you see yourself in the world around you. So there's value in taking the time to cultivate those things, to disengage with people, places, and things that just don't value you. So if you've done any type of recovery work, talking about people, places, and things is really important. Sometimes we really have to change those. But there's some work in ourselves that we do too, so that we change how we align and what we believe about ourselves. Sometimes we tolerate things because we don't believe that we are worthy of something different, but you're inherently worthy. Even at your lowest, when you've lost everything and you feel like you've hit rock bottom, there's somebody who's going to come along and profit off of you. They're going to profit off you. The only reason they can do that is because you have value. Your value and worth is inherent just because you exist. And even if you fail to recognize that, someone will recognize that. They will exploit that if you don't recognize it. So even if you are rejected from a space or by a person, sometimes that is the greatest gift, because they have not understood your value and your worth, and you're not in alignment with that space and with that person, and that is more than okay. And it's taken a long time to get to the place where I can accept that, and move on from it. But recent events have helped me to really understand how much growth I've done in that area. I remember I was homeless at one point. Now, I wasn't on the street homeless quite yet, but I was in shelters and things. And the way that some of the shelter staff spoke to us, um, was to really be was quite demeaning and dehumanizing. And even in that, I remember telling this woman, like, me being homeless is a situation that does not define who and what I am. So how you're speaking to me is not okay. That did not go well for me in that space, and that's fine. But being homeless is a situation. It is not a definition of who I am, and I don't deserve any less respect or to be treated with less dignity. I don't have less dignity. You know what I mean? Because of that, and if I had allowed it, though, it would have allowed me to feel that to feel less than. Sometimes who you are and who you show up as can be intimidating to other people. Other people have insecurities, and when you show up as yourself, sometimes they feel some kind of way. And because they feel some kind of way, they will try to tell you who and what you are, to try to define you to be less than, so that they can feel more powerful. And that can only happen when we give away our power. And if you've done that, forgive yourself. And that sounds, for some people, that can be difficult, and that's okay. Wherever you are is okay. Um, if you haven't learned to have self compassion, or don't even know how to do that for yourself, that's okay. All of that's okay. I've been through different phases and different places in my journey, and what I'm able to do for myself, and how I'm able to show up in the world has changed in the course of that, and it's all been okay. And it's taken a long time to come to that acceptance. And sometimes when people tell us that, it can feel really hard to apply that. It can be really triggering sometimes, and that's okay. So whatever space you're in, it's okay. I'm just kind of sharing this particular space and time. Again, Lisa Nichols' post came up, and it was just a good reminder for me to tap into that. I've gone through a lot of hard things in life, and most people can say that. Most of us have gone through trials. This life is not without them. So most of us can say that in some arena. There's grief and things that come up. All of these things can shape and mold us, and affect how we experience the world and experience ourselves in the world. But our worth, our dignity, all of those things, they're inherent to you because you exist, not because of what you've done, not done, what you said or failed to say. None of that will diminish your worth and your value, because they are inherent. So that's just kind of the thing I'm reflecting on and sharing. You know what I mean? I've gone into workspaces, and I got awards, and financially, I was compensated in a way that said that they honored and valued me. And even within that same company, I would end up under, a different team, a different manager, and suddenly I was a problem, and everything I did was a problem. And I was confused, like, I'm not showing up any different. What is the problem? I don't understand. And that would happen again and again, till I would begin to question my worth and lose my sense of identity. I was doing group therapy, and one of my like, our group was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. It was so supportive. Everyone was supportive of the journey that we were on. Everyone was really good about validating and holding space for one another. We were all in these different spaces of our journey, but our group dynamic was phenomenal. Our group therapist was phenomenal. Now, he was also my individual therapist, and I ended up in a different group, but I still saw him for my individual therapy. And the dynamic was different in that group, and I began to become really concerned with how I showed up and who I was and sharing in the group. And I went to him, and I was like, I think I might be a problem, and I'm really sorry. I don't know what to do. And he was just like, well, why do you think you're a problem? And I was like, I don't know. Sometimes, like, I show up this way. And he was like, Melinda, you're a gift to any group. What you do is you add value to the group. And I was like, well, why is it that sometimes I'm celebrated and sometimes I'm ostracized for the same thing? I don't know what to do with that. And he shared with me a article called "Sane and Insane Spaces" or "Sane and Insane Places," something like that. But at that time, I did not know how to stand in myself. So my different affects would show up, to try to adapt to different spaces, and who I was in different spaces was very different, and who I was around could change how I showed up in the world. That still happens today, but there's a lot more awareness within me about that. I'm aware that I show up that way. I'm aware. I have a lot more awareness of when it happens. Not always, but a lot of times there's a lot more awareness within me. But I've really learned to shore up and strengthen some of those mental and emotional muscles, so that I'm not so affected by outside influences. So today I'm facing very similar challenges, but how I'm going through those challenges is quite different. I haven't lost my sense of my own self worth and my own self value in that process. And that's been quite a bit of growth for me, to be able to do that. But I think it's important that, you know, when I find myself in those spaces, that I recognize that this isn't the space for me, and it's not because there's something wrong with me. This simply is not a space or a person that's in alignment with where I am, and that is okay. And to be able to remove myself from those spaces, because when I haven't removed myself from those spaces, that can be quite dangerous. If you're around people that tear you down constantly, no matter how strong you are over time, that can wear you down, and you begin to question yourself. It's what happens within abuse dynamics, and unfortunately, there's a lot of workspaces, institutional spaces, personal relationships that can be quite abusive, and toxic, to you. And then it changes how you show up in the world. If you spend your time around a lot of dangerous people, you might not realize how many dangerous uh, traits you pick up. So, or toxic traits that you might start to embody just to survive in that environment. So, it's very important to recognize when it's that way, and to remove yourself as soon as possible, and to forgive yourself for the times and ways that you might find yourself in those spaces where you didn't remove yourself. Sometimes it's not, abuse can be quite subtle when it starts off, and sometimes you don't recognize the way it's impacting you, and you can find yourself in situations for much longer, than you could ever have imagined that you would be in them, and they can be quite detrimental. So there's been, I've done that in so many ways where I've had to really forgive myself. But just reflecting on that today, and sharing a little bit about that. Maybe you've had your own journey and you want to kind of share and comment on that. I do love interactions. Again, this is a new page, and so I'm just starting off and things like that. But, you know, share your story or your input, and that might benefit another. But I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful day.